Hey guys, tonight we're diving into something a little foggy. Not just foggy like your memory when you forget why you walked into the kitchen. This is a heavy, rolling mist of the North Sea, thick enough to make your eyelashes damp and your sense of direction go on vacation. Imagine you're standing on a creaky wooden deck, salty spray clinging to your skin, the sun just a vague white smear behind a blanket of haze. The kind of day when everything smells like seaweed and uncertainty. Yeah, perfect night for some Viking navigation, right? Now, you may think GPS is annoying when it loses signal in a parking garage, but out here in the year 845, you've got nothing but wind, birds, and gut instinct. Oh, and maybe a few dreamcatchers that smell like goat fur and damp ash, but we'll get to that. All I'm saying is, you probably wouldn't survive more than 20 minutes. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe. But only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments, where are you listening from tonight? And what time is it there? Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You shift your weight slightly as the deck tilts under your feet. The ship rocks lazily over the grayish swell, your sea legs still half asleep. The North Sea wraps around the wooden vessel, like a cold hand. It's June, but the wind doesn't care. It snakes through your furs, whispers behind your ears. The sails creak. The ropes groan. A gull screams overhead, because of course it does. The coastline behind you has long since disappeared. All you see now is water and sky, both the same color, a tired, bleached-out pewter. You wonder, how did anyone decide this was a good idea? To sail into this gray infinity, without a map or a compass or even a decent snack. But that's the Viking way. You sail forward, because behind you is nothing left to conquer. You hear a voice, not loud, not commanding, but low and matter-of-fact. The helmsman. He's an older man, his beard tangled like driftwood, eyes squinting into the mist. He doesn't look nervous. In fact, he seems almost relaxed, like he's reading a bedtime story only he understands. His hand rests lightly on the rudder, steady and patient. "Fog's thin today," he mutters. You blink. "This is thin?" He points, not with his hand, but with his chin. Vikings are masters of the subtle nod. Watch the gulls. They don't go far without land in reach. You squint into the mist. The gulls are little dots, wheeling overhead like trash-loving angels. Somehow, he's using them to steer. No compass, just birds. It's then you realize this journey isn't about what's in front of you. It's about noticing what's all around you. The sea talks. The sky whispers. And if you listen close, you just might find your way. Let's talk about fog. Not the cute, moody kind that makes your neighborhood look like a murder mystery. No, this is the kind that clings to your boots and messes with your sense of distance. For Vikings, it was an everyday obstacle and a training ground. The fog stripped away visual cues, so you had to rely on sound, smell, vibration. It turned you into a human barometer. Your ears prick as you hear something odd, a splash, then a rhythmic slap, slap, slap. The rowers, not your ships, someone else's, far off. Vikings listen for things like this: the echo of another hull, the cry of different seabirds, even a change in how their own ship groaned in the water. Some claimed they could smell land before they saw it, a shift from salty kelp to pine and peat. Others said the mist held the voices of drowned sailors. But, bedtime stories. There's a soft thud beside you. A boy, maybe 12, is dragging a net of soaked seaweed across the deck. He's muttering about troll currents. You tilt your head. Troll currents? He shrugs. Sometimes the waves pull funny when trolls are watching. That's what my uncle says. Well, that's comforting. You watch him go, leaving a trail of green slime that your foot almost finds. Now here's something most people don't know. Vikings use what we now call wave piloting. It sounds like a sci-fi skill, but it's basically this: feeling how your boat moves. Polynesians did it too, but the Norse, oh, they took it personally. They believed every stretch of water had its own rhythm. The Skagerrak strait hummed like a wasp. The Baltic tapped like fingers on a shield. And in fog like this, that rhythm was your only friend. Some helmsmen claimed they could taste the salt differently in each region. Others used to pattern a bird song, or the way their dogs curled up before sleep. You laugh at first, and then you look around. No stars, no sun, just breath and breeze and instinct. You begin to understand. The old helmsman leans toward you again. Want to know a secret? You nod. We don't steer toward a place. We steer away from fear. Now let's sprinkle in a little history you probably learned wrong. You were told the Vikings just raided and pillaged, angry men with axes and terrible personal hygiene. But the truth is, they were among the best navigators in the medieval world. The earliest evidence of their long-distance sea travel dates back to the 8th century, and by the time of Harold Fairhair, they were crossing to Iceland, Greenland, even North America. How? Not with magic. Well, not just with magic, but with 1,000 small skills passed down like bedtime rhymes. Your fingers touch the carved railing. There are symbols there, runes, scratched deep into the wood. One looks like a spiral, another like a fish biting its own tail. The old man sees your curiosity. For good dreams, he says, tapping one of them. You blink. Dreams. He nods. If you dream true, you sail true. And just like that, we're tiptoeing into tonight's deeper theme. The dreamcatchers of the Norse. Not like the feathered ones you see at tourist shops. No, these were coarser, rougher. Twine and bone and sometimes seal whiskers. They hung above bunks and in cargo nets. But they weren't just for sleep. They were said to trap wayward thoughts, doubts, distractions, bad omens. One sagging net above your bunk has a bird skull tied into the weave. You decide not to ask why. Some historians still debate whether Viking dreamcatchers were real or just poetic metaphor. The sagas aren't always clear, and the archaeology is murky at best. But oral traditions persist. Fishermen in the Faroe Islands still talk of night nets and sleep knots, said to protect sailors from the voice beneath the hull. Creepy? Sure, but also oddly comforting. Like when you leave the bathroom light on after watching a horror movie. The ship rocks again. The fog begins to thin just slightly. You see the vague outline of a wave crest, dark, glassy, majestic. There's a rhythm to it. 1, 2, pause. 1, 2, pause. Like a giant breathing. You match your own breath to it, without thinking, and then you hear it, a faint hum. Could be the wind in the rigging. Could be your imagination. Could be both. The helmsman doesn't speak, but his eyes narrow. You think. He hears it too. Far off, a gull screeches again. The same one, you're sure. You follow its path with your eyes, and there on the horizon, a darker smudge against the endless gray. Land, you ask. He shakes his head. Clouds. You sigh, but you smile, too, because somehow, even in all this uncertainty, you're moving forward, not in a straight line, but steadily. You stir as the boat groans under the weight of a new morning, or at least What counts as morning out here? No rooster crows, no sunbeam through the window, just a slightly paler shade of gray bleeding into the sky, like someone dimmed the world by accident and never fixed it. Your fingers are stiff from the damp. You shift your cloak, trying to shake out the night's chill, but it clings to you like a persistent cat. A seagull drops something squishy onto the deck near your boot. Delightful. Breakfast is a mix of dried fish, old bread, and the overwhelming sensation that your ancestors had very limited taste buds. The ship rolls gently, less like it's sailing, and more like it's considering whether to. The sea is quiet, but not calm. It hums beneath you, and ahead, just breaking through the thinning fog, you see something shimmer. Not a lighthouse, not a miracle, but still strange. The helmsman gestures. He's squinting again, pointing toward the sky with a sliver of something held up in his hand. It glints, ever so slightly, catching some invisible light. You edge closer. It's a rock. No, not a rock. A crystal, roughly the size of a plum, faceted and cloudy like old ice. He turns it slowly in the light, and just like that, you see the glow. Sunstone, he says simply. Now, here's where things get weird and weirdly brilliant. You might think ancient Vikings would get lost the moment clouds rolled in, but they had a trick, and it wasn't just reading bird gossip or licking the air. They had sunstones. No, not from Skyrim. Real minerals, like Iceland spar, a form of calcite that splits light. When held up to the sky, even through cloud cover, it can reveal the sun's position by polarizing light. Basically, it turns gray skies into a game of hot and cold. You try it. The helmsman hands you the stone, and at first, it feels like nonsense, just a cool rock. But then, as you turn it slowly, you notice a pale flare bloom on the surface, a spot brighter than the rest. Move it wrong, it vanishes. Turn it just so, and it blooms again. He nods. There, that's the sun. He shrugs. Close enough. Most people have never heard of sunstones. The sagas mention them in passing, vague references to Solarstein, but archaeological evidence is scarce. In 2013, researchers tested calcite crystals and confirmed they could work for navigation. The technology was there. But whether it was widespread or just legendary, that's where things get cloudy. Like most Viking things, some historians still scoff. Too precise, they say. Too delicate. Others argue it was part of a ritual toolkit, more sacred than practical. Not something for every sailor, but maybe just a helmsman, a symbol, a way to focus. And that's what you feel now, not certainty, but intention. Holding the sunstone doesn't guarantee anything, but it makes you feel like you're doing something, like you're not completely at the mercy of the sea. Hey, same reason we still check the weather app when we already know it's going to rain. The fog begins to lift in earnest now, like a curtain drawn back just enough to tease a view. The sky remains overcast, but the gray has gradients, layers. You can see the difference between sea, sky, and not sky. And more importantly, light. Not much, but enough. You catch a moment of brightness, not sunlight exactly, but the memory of it. And the helmsman smiles. North by east, he says. You know it like you understand. You don't. Below deck, someone sneezes so violently that 3 people shout, Odin's beard, in unison. You duck your head under a loose sail and find a small group huddled around something woven. A net, but not for fish. Too fine, too carefully tied. It's a dream net, made of twine, sinew, tiny bones, some dyed red, others left bare. In the center is a shard of amber. Around the edges, chicken feathers. Or go. You're not getting close enough to pluck and find out. One of the men, younger, dark hair braided down his back, is threading something through the net. A bead? No, a tooth. Human, maybe. You don't ask. He looks up. Each tooth keeps a storm at bay, he says, with the sincerity of someone explaining how batteries work. You raise an eyebrow. Dreams warn us. The net keeps the worst ones tangled. Safer for all. You don't laugh. Something in his tone, or maybe the sway of the ship, tells you he means it. Little known truth. In some Norse traditions, dreams weren't just night thoughts. They were prophecies or warnings or echoes of other lives. The line between dream and vision was foggy, like the horizon you just sailed through. Some sailors recorded dreams before voyages, scratched in the bone or written in runes on driftwood. Others carried charms carved from antler, bearing the nightmare bindrune, a symbol meant to trap fear. One saga even tells of a woman named Fridas who dreamed of a black fish with a human voice before her ship wrecked off Greenland. The crew ignored her. They drowned. She didn't. That's the whole story. No moral, just cold vindication. Back on deck, the helmsman is humming. It's not a song, just a note, low and slow, like the sea breathing. The crew moves around him as if by instinct. Ropes tightened, sails trimmed, all without command. You see it now, how each person has a role, a rhythm. Even the dream net, swaying gently in the hold, feels like it's pulling its weight. You hold the sunstone up again. The glint finds you immediately. You're learning, he says, you think. Or maybe the stone just likes you. But hey, you'll take the win. By mid-afternoon, if that's what this murky light qualifies as, you've settled into a strange calm. The ship feels steady. The sea is less grumpy. And for once, you're not cold in your marrow. The boy from yesterday, the one with the seaweed, is on lookout duty now. He's tied a feather into his hair. You ask why. Helps me see the wind. You glance at the feather. It's pointing straight at your nose. Well, you say, congratulations, I guess. He grins. Historians still debate how much of this was real navigation and how much was ritual, and honestly, the line doesn't matter out here. Whether it's science or superstition, it works, or at least it feels like it works, which, in the middle of a trackless sea, is pretty much the same thing. You lean on the railing. Water stretches out in every direction. The fog is gone, but the mystery remains. And the sunstone, tucked into your belt now, is warm from your body heat, warm like memory, warm like belief. And as dusk rolls in again, soft and slow, you close your eyes. You dream of light through stone. You dream of feathers in the wind. And somewhere deep in the ship, the net catches your dream and holds it tight until morning. The wind wakes you, not like an alarm clock or a friendly whisper, but more like someone pulling the blanket off your bed while dumping a glass of cold water on your face. A gust barrels across the deck, scattering straw, flipping the cloak, and making one poor sailor lose his only cup to the waves. You blink against the salt. The world is moving again, fast. The sea has picked up, and with it, the rhythm of everything else. Ropes groan, sails snap. The mast creaks like it's reconsidering its career. The sky is a sour gray, smeared with streaks of darker clouds curling at the edges. Somewhere to the west, a faint rumble, thunder, or maybe someone up there just dropped something large. You pull your cloak tighter and shuffle toward the prow. The helmsman is already there. Of course he is. His beard is braided today, probably for wind resistance, and his hand rests lightly on the tiller. Storm's moving north, he says. How do you know? He just snorts. Because the gulls shut up. And he's right. For once, the sky is silent. Not a screech, not a caw. The kind of silence that makes you want to hold your breath, just in case you're being too loud for nature. You glance toward the clouds and see it. A streak of glowing white, arcing through the sky. Not lightning, not yet, but it's a warning. You've heard this kind of glow called the eyes twitch. Something in the atmosphere preparing to snap. And here's where it gets weird, not the storm, but the Viking reaction to it. Because instead of hiding, they start to sing. One of the rowers belts out a low, vibrating note. Another joins in, then another. It's not harmony, exactly. It's more like a sonic anchor. A deep looping hum, repeated over and over, low in the gut. You feel it in your chest before your ears catch it. The dream net, tucked in the hold, sways in time. The ship isn't bracing for the storm. It's tuning itself to it. Let's talk about belief systems on a boat. When you're surrounded by water, out of sight of land, and your life depends on planks and prayers, you get creative. Some believe that storms were caused by angry spirits or jealous gods. Others said it was just Thor sneezing. But one belief, rarely discussed outside small regional texts, was that storms were drawn to confusion. That's right, emotional chaos. If the crew was out of sync, the skies would punish them. So when the winds rose, the answer wasn't panic. It was unity, through sound, through rhythm. The humming, that wasn't for comfort. That was to realign your frequencies with the sea. Or, so they said, you hum along, mostly out of peer pressure. And oddly, it helps. Here's a fun fact you won't find in your high school textbook. Some Viking ships had tiny carved rooster heads nailed to the prow, hidden beneath more fearsome dragon heads. Why? To warn of unnatural storms. Sailors claimed the rooster would crow if danger approached from beyond the veil. Crow being a generous term for a wooden click or rattle made by the wind through its hollow base. You reach under the prow now, lifting the carved snout of a beast, and sure enough, tucked beneath is a rooster's head, worn smooth by salt and years. You press your ear to it. It clicks once. The helmsman watches you. Means we have time. Until what? Until we don't. Helpful. Suddenly, a sound, high and strange. Not thunder, not bird. It's the voice. You freeze. It's faint, distant, but there, riding the wind like a thread. A woman's voice? Maybe. Or a boy's. It sings a phrase over and over, unintelligible but clear in tone. The same four notes, rising and falling like breath. You scan the waves. Nothing. But the crew all pause. One by one. Even the old man's hand tightens on the tiller. See him, he mutters. What? He doesn't answer. Because everyone knows. You don't speak during a sea hymn. According to some obscure folk tales, mostly dismissed as poetic nonsense, the sea sings just before shifting, before storm, before a change in current, before, well, anything. The Vikings had no radios, no radar, but they had ears and stories. And one of those stories told of voices that travel with waves, calling to sailors who'd lost their course. Not ghosts, not sirens, just echoes from the ocean floor, drifting up through foam and time. Some said those who answered to see him were blessed. Others said they were never seen again. You decide not to hum back. And then the storm hits, not with a bang, but with a sudden tilt. The ship lurches, decks groaning like a bad knee. Rain needles sideways. The wind punches your hood off your head. And the sea? The sea starts to sing. Not a voice, but a tone. Low, continuous. Like a whale's lullaby fed through a cathedral pipe. And you realize something horrifying. It's in tune with the crew's humming. Sailors across cultures reported hearing the sea sing before or during storms. Some chalked it up to changes in air pressure or the vibration of ship hulls. Others, like our seafaring friends here, believed it was a test. Keep humming, the helmsman orders, and for once, everyone obeys. You grip the railing as water slaps the side. The waves aren't monstrous, not yet, but they're confused, jumbled, slamming from odd angles. The rain makes it hard to see, hard to think. But you hum, and eventually, so does the wind. It dips, softens, the sea quiets, and like a candle blown out by a whisper, the storm leaves, just like that. You sit down hard, soaked and shaking, not from cold, but from the strangeness of it all. The rooster didn't crow again. The sea hymn faded. And your voice, your one lonely hum, had felt like it mattered. The helmsman presses a sunstone into your palm. You listen, he says. You nod, not sure what you heard. But deep in the ship, the dream net still hangs. And a single new feather is tied into it, soaked dark and glistening, collected during the storm. For luck, for memory, or maybe for the next time the sea decides to sing. The sea has gone still. Not glassy, not beautiful, but still in that uncomfortable way, like a room where everyone suddenly stopped talking because someone said something weird. The sails hang loose. The crew moves with a slow, purposeful quiet of people afraid to wake something. It's the kind of calm that feels like the inhale before a scream. You sit near the midship mast, eyes drifting across the deck. A few sailors are repairing a torn rope. One is mumbling what might be a prayer, or possibly a shopping list of regrets. And you're watching a man weaving something in his lap. It's not fishing net. It's something else. Circular. Strands of animal sinew twisted and tightened into a tight spiral. Bits of feather, bone, and dark thread knotting through the center. It sways slightly in the motionless air. He looks up. For the dreams, he says. Of course. Let's talk about BMO Qua Nuoi Viking. They're dreamcatchers. Not the polished, symmetrical ones you find in souvenir shops. These are lopsided, rough, handmade, every one different, like a fingerprint, or like anxiety, if anxiety were made out of horsehair and bird parts. They're not just hung over beds, either. On Viking ships, they were tied to the rudder, the prow, the entry to cargo hold, places where dreams were thought to slip between waking and sleep. Some sailors swore by them, claiming they caught bad omens. Others thought they trapped actual spirits, the kind that stowed away in your head while you slept, only to whisper you into the wrong direction the next morning. You lean in. The center of the net has a small coin woven into it, Roman maybe, bent and blackened with age. What's that for, you ask? To bribe the dreams, he says. Right, obviously. There's a tale the crew shares at night, told in hushed tones over dry biscuits and salted meat. Long ago, a Viking ship sailed west toward Iceland. On the fourth night, the helmsman dreamed of a whale with 3 eyes, each blinking out of order. When he woke, he ordered the ship turn south. The crew refused. They sailed on. 3 days later, they hit a reef no map had ever shown. The ship broke apart like dry wood. Only the helmsman survived. clinging to the carved prow, his dream net wrapped around his wrist like a snake. He never sailed again, but he taught dream weaving until his death. They say he had a different net for every kind of weather. Rain, wide knots. Snow, feathers only. Fog, no center, just rings and rings with nothing inside. A hollow spiral to catch the shapeless. You drift asleep with that image, a net with no middle. And when you wake, the sea is still holding its breath, but the air smells different. You inhale again. It's not salt. It's not wood or fish. It's sweet. You rise slowly, following the scent, and see something floating toward the ship. A small cluster of flowers, bobbing on the water like an offering. Blue petals, tiny, fragile, out of place. The helmsman appears beside you, silent. He nods at them. Land nearby. How do you know? No flowers without hands. And just like that, you realize someone set those afloat. Not nature. People. Here's a strange but true detail. Vikings sometimes released offerings into the sea to wake the land, especially before landfall. The sea, they believed, had its own dreams, and to reach shore safely, you had to stir it gently. Flowers, carved wood, bread soaked in honey, tiny gestures, courtesies, really. Some modern historians think this was just superstition. Others point out that tracking floating debris, especially flowers and wood, is a smart way to detect coastal proximity. Currents change near land. Objects start to circle. Vultures drift differently. Even the temperature of the air shifts. But most Viking texts don't talk about tracking. They talk about asking. You don't chart the sea. You ask it to share. The wind stirs, finally. You hear a low creak from the mast, and the sail give a lazy flap, like it's waking up from a nap. The ship shifts gently, and someone ties a new dream net onto the rigging. This one full of red thread and little bits of seashell. New course, the helmsman says. To where? Wherever the flowers came from. As the sun or whatever sickly light passes for it climbs higher, you spot it, a smudge on the horizon. Not clouds this time. Land. Faint. Uneven. Like teeth against the sky. The ship pivots slightly, and the crew begins their quiet ritual of approach. Tightening ropes, murmuring old verses, tying their cloaks tighter. Not because they're cold, because land is always more dangerous than sea. That's what they say. You find a boy with a feather in his hair, sitting near the prow, eyes fixed forward. What's the first thing you'll do on land? You ask. He shrugs. Find a stone. Make a new net. He shows you his old one. It's small, barely the size of your hand, made of string and bits of fish bone. You point to a knot in the center. What's that? Leftover from a dream, he says. Good or bad? He thinks. Still deciding. Fair enough. You lean on the railing as the ship glides forward. Below deck, the dream net sways softly, catching nothing or everything. The wind is rising now. Not strong. Just enough to suggest movement. And for the first time, the sea feels alive, not angry, not moody, but listening. And for now, at least, it seems like your answer. You reach for your own dream net, looped at your side. One feather, one coin, one knot you don't remember tying. You tighten it slightly, just in case. You've almost reached land, but not the kind you imagined. There's no beach, no friendly harbor with flags fluttering and someone offering you bread. Instead, it's a jagged silhouette, dark cliffs rising like broken teeth, slick with moss and mist. The sea snarls softly around them, foam hissing against stone. Your ship drifts close, the current pulling with a strange insistence, like it wants to show you something. And it does, because nestled between the cliffs, almost hidden, is a small cove, barely wide enough for a longship. The helmsman steers in without a word, as if he's done this before, maybe in a dream. As you pass through the narrow opening, the noise changes. The roar of the waves dulls. The wind quiets. Even the creak of the ship sounds muffled. It's like sailing into a closed room made of rock. And from somewhere, you can't see where, you hear singing. But not from people. From the stone. Vikings believed certain places held memory. Not just ghosts, though they have plenty of those, but actual echoes of past sounds. They call them Dromheller or dream caves. These were places where sound behaved differently. You listen now, and sure enough, it's not your imagination. The wind brushing the cliff repeats itself in waves. A seagull cries above, and its call returns seconds later, not once, but 3 times. First high, then low, then oddly metallic. The cliffs aren't just reflecting sound. They're changing it. Someone whispers, "Don't speak loud here." The rock remembers. As you step onto land, if this patch of seaweed-slick stone counts, you feel underfoot, warm, though no sun has touched it, and vibrating just slightly like a hell breath. You aren't alone. At the far end of the cove stand a figure, hunched, wrapped in furs the color of ash. You can't see their face. But they move with purpose, gathering something from the base of the cliff. A net? No, not quite. It's strands of seagrass. Long, flexible, woven together into loops and spirals. Like dream nets, but different, less delicate, more deliberate. The figure doesn't speak, but gestures for you to follow. Of course you do. Inside a crevice in the cliff, barely wide enough for 2 shoulders, you squeeze into a narrow cavern. Light filters in from cracks above, bouncing off wet stone. The air smells like salt and moss and something else, something old. Maybe ash, maybe memory. The figure lights a small flame from a pouch of moss and oil. It flares blue, then settles into orange. In its glow, you see what lines the walls. Etchings, hundreds of them. Spirals, nets, birds with human eyes, ships with wings. Symbols that look like runes but twist slightly wrong, like someone carved them in their sleep. The figure turns. Their face is old, not aged, old. The kind of face you imagine under the hood of time itself. Their eyes reflect the firelight like polished rock. They speak. Slowly, their voice rough with the rhythm of waves over gravel. Welcome to the Echo Net. According to obscure saga fragments, the kind most historians dismiss, certain Viking navigators trained in echo reading. They'd visit caves like this before long voyages. Here, they'd hang nets made of grass, bone, and shell. Then they'd sing. Not songs, exactly. More like tones. And the caves would answer, not always with echoes, but with shapes in the nets. A knot would twist tighter. A feather would spin. Sometimes a strand would snap on its own. They believed the cave offered guidance. Or warnings. Your guide, the figure who still hasn't offered a name, places a net between you and the fire. It begins to twitch. One strand curls. A feather flips backward. They nod solemnly. Storm on the 6th night. They say, "You shiver. Will we survive it?" They look at you for a long time. You'll dream of birds. That is enough. Not helpful, but oddly comforting. Back on the ship, the crew is quiet. The cove did something to them. You see it in their faces. One sailor has drawn a spiral on his palm in charcoal. Another wears a new net around his neck. The boy with the feather sits cross-legged, muttering a rhyme in a language you don't quite recognize. You glance at your own net. Nothing new, except a strand of bluegrass. You didn't add that. Strange but true. Some Viking dream nets were known to change on their own, or so the legends go. Nets that were left alone would sometimes develop new knots, or sprout moss in the shape of runes. Modern scientists chalk it up to humidity and natural decay. But some archaeologists, especially the fringe ones with very enthusiastic YouTube channels, claim these changes match dream reports written in sagas, that a net's shape could predict a storm or warn a betrayal. Of course, no one agrees. Historians still debate whether these nets were spiritual tools or just bedtime security blankets for people who lived one lightning bolt away from death. You wonder that yourself. Then again you saw the feather flip. Night falls again. The ship rocks gently, now anchored just outside the cove. The cliffs stand behind you like watchful giants. The nets sway gently above your head. You lie on your back and stare at the stars, what few manage to poke through the cloud-ragged sky. You trace patterns. There's one that looks like a fish swallowing a sword, another like a bird with no wings, and one, faint and flickering, that might just be a spiral. You close your eyes. In your dream, you walk through stone halls lit by moss fire. You hear nets twitching in time with your footsteps. You hum 3 notes over and over, and the walls reply. When you wake, your dream net has a new knot, and somehow you're no longer afraid of the storm on the 6th night, because the net will remember it for you. The 5th day dawns not with light, but with a change in air. The wind has a bite now, sharper, not yet cruel, but with teeth just behind the breath. The crew moves with quiet focus, checking rigging twice, whispering words into the seams of their cloaks, tightening cords on the dream nets like they're cinching shut old memories. You stretch your back on the creaking deck and glance toward the east. The sky wears a bruised shade of lavender, and the clouds drift low and fast, like they're running from something. The helmsman watches them without blinking. He finally says, "She's waking." You assume he means the storm, or the ship, or the sea. But when you ask, he just smiles. You'll know. That's never encouraging. Just after midday, the horizon swells. Not a wave, a sound, low, heavy, and far off, like thunder stretched too thin. You feel it more than hear it. In your ribs, in your boots, in the echoing cavities of your thoughts. The kind of sound that makes birds stop flying. You look around. There are no birds. Then you see it, rolling over the water, slow and regal. A mass of fog so dense it looks like fabric, dragging its hem across the sea. But inside it or behind it, you spot flashes of white. Bright, sudden, silent. Lightning? No thunder follows. Just light without noise. And here's where things get weird. The dream nets start to twitch. You rush below deck, where a sailor is tying knots in a hurry. His fingers work faster than thought, muscle memory from old panic. You ask what he's doing. Binding the mouths, he says, not looking up. You blink. Whose mouths? He ties another knot tighter than the rest. The ones in the fog. Obviously. There's an old belief, not widely shared and mostly forgotten, that certain kinds of storms weren't just weather. They were beings, sentient forces that move with intention. Vikings feared these above all, calling them dromskugga or dream shadows. They didn't just sink ships. They took minds. Crew who stared too long into the fog would start to murmur, then babble, then fall silent. Some would leap overboard without a sound. Others would begin to speak in voices not their own. The only protection? Binding your dreams with cords, charms, or tightly woven sleep bundles soaked in ash and seawater. You're handed one now. It smells like moldy rope and despair. Keep it on your chest, they tell you. Tied to the heart. Keeps your name in place. Comforting. The fog reaches your ship just after dusk. At first, you don't notice the cold. Your skin's too focused on the pressure, the weight of the air, the way your lungs suddenly feel like they're inhaling syrup. The sails go slack. The wood groans. The world narrows. And then the sounds start. Voices. High. Low. Some sound like your own. You whip your head around. No one's talking. But the nets are moving. Tiny twitches. Spirals flexing. Feathers stiffening in the air like they've been electrified. And all around you that low, stretched thunder hum continues, not loud but endless. A note that never ends. The helmsman doesn't blink. Don't listen, he says. To what? He doesn't answer. Here's the thing few know about Viking navigation. It wasn't just about direction. It was about resisting distraction. A crew that kept course was one that kept focus. The skalds, Viking poets, warn of dreams whispered by cloud, meaning delusions brought on by exhaustion, fear, and supernatural fog. To fight it, they invented tricks. Some wore blindfolds laced with bone ash. Others repeated simple rhymes to anchor the mind. A few bit their tongues until blood filled the mouth, a taste reminder the real. But most relied on dream nets, hung like shields around the ship, swaying in the storm wind, catching stray thoughts before they enter the soul. That's the theory, anyway. You clutch your sleep bundle and try humming something meaningless. Anything to drown out the voices. But one voice cuts through. It sounds like your own, and it says your name. You turn slowly, heart pounding. No one near you is speaking. The nets dance harder now, feathers flaring like alarm signals. One snaps in half with an audible crack. Another tangles itself into a tight, throbbing knot. The helmsman walks the deck, dragging a charred branch that leaves black smudges in a spiral pattern. He mutters under his breath, not in prayer, but rhythm, cadence, protection. You glance overboard. The sea has vanished. There's only fog, and inside it, flashes of figures. Some human, some not quite. Historians still argue whether Viking fog myths were metaphor or real fear. Hallucinations from poor diet and sleep deprivation. One textbook says, severe weather-induced panic. May be true, but then again, multiple sagas tell of ships that sailed into fog and came out with fewer memories. Entire crews forgetting their families. Helmsmen who couldn't recall their names. One ship docked in Denmark with a single man aboard, smiling, humming, and carving circles into his own palms. No storm damage. No wounds. Just fog. And nets tied tighter than human hands should manage. Eventually, slowly, the fog begins to lift. Not all at once. It frays like an old curtain unraveling. The voices recede. The air loses its weight. The sails twitch again, uncertain. You sit down hard, your breath ragged. Your net is tangled. The center is gone. The web pulled loose like it melted. Only the ring remains. The helmsman takes it from you gently. She took the dream, he says, but left the shape. You stare at him. That's good. He shrugs. Depends on the dream. Night settles in. The sea glows faintly with plankton, tiny specks of light blinking in the waves, like stars falling into water. You lie down on the deck, too tired to move, your bundle tied to your chest, your net empty beside you. You close your eyes, and in the darkness you hear nothing. Not voices, not fog, just the steady breath of the ship as it rocks you gently toward morning. And somewhere in that hush, a new knot forms, tight, small, and waiting. For what? You don't know, but it hums in time with your heart. When you wake, the world is red, not danger red, more like sunset spilled too early. The kind that stains the horizon before you even know the sun's up. The clouds are thin and long, like ribbons stretched across the sky, glowing at the edges with that eerie salmon pink that always feels like it means something. And it does. The crew's already muttering. Red at morning, sailor's warning. Even the helmsman's jaw is tight today. You pull your cloak tighter as a breeze snakes past your neck. It's warm, oddly warm, the kind that makes you sweat and shiver at the same time, the kind that shouldn't exist at sea, the kind that usually means something's about to go wrong. Someone points. You follow their finger to the sky and see it, a thin, jagged line of bright red light, low on the horizon, right between sea and sky. At first you think it's just a break in clouds, but it doesn't move like light. It stays. The helmsman calls it the thread. The sea gives it once a season, he says. Once. Maybe. You blink. What's it for? To show what you shouldn't follow. Of course. Helpful as ever, according to lesser-known Viking lore, found mostly in margin notes of weather sagas and scratched onto drinking horns. The thread of red was believed to be a false path, not made by the gods, but by dreams. It appears before storms or before decisions. Sometimes it led to safe passage. Other times, to places ships weren't meant to reach. Not because they didn't exist, but because they did. The sea, they said, is full of places not drawn on maps. Islands that move, lands that sleep, shores that watch. And the thread? That's the ribbon between the seen and unseen. You stare at it now, that bright red line. It doesn't ripple with the waves. It hovers like it's been pinned to the air, and it pulls at something in your chest. Curiosity? Fear? Maybe both. The boy with the feather in his hair appears beside you. You want to follow it, he says. Don't. Why not? He shrugs. Because the birds won't. You glance up. Sure enough, not a single wing flaps in that direction. All gulls, cormorants, and puffins, yes, puffins, are fly away from the thread, as if the sky's been fenced off. The boy ties a knot in his dream net. See, he whispers. Left loop means don't go. You tie your own loop a little looser, just in case. As the ship drifts, the thread shifts, almost like it notices you watching. Its edges begin to blur, and suddenly you're not sure it was ever really there. Maybe it still is, but it's hiding now, in the light. Now's a good time to mention the fire path, a real phenomenon reported by medieval and early modern sailors. When the sun hits the sea just right, particularly in the high latitudes, you can get an optical illusion, a perfect band of red or gold, stretching across the water like a painted bridge. Some claim the Vikings used it to guide voyages. Others say they feared it, because if you followed it for too long, you'd lose track of time. Days vanish. The stars don't move. The sea stays still, but the ship doesn't. And by the time you notice, you're somewhere else. Back on deck, the crew begins whispering again. One of the nets has tightened. No wind, no hands. just curled in on itself like a fist. The helmsman inspects it and says one word: drift. The ship's lost its tug. There's no pull of current, no push of breeze, just floating. The thread still faintly glows in the distance. We're between poles, he says. Between what and what, you ask. Real and realer, says a boy. You sigh. You guys really love riddles, huh? He grins. Only when they rhyme. As night creeps in, the sky turns velvet black. No stars. Just cloud. The sea is slick, thick, dark. And still, the silence is loud. Too loud. Until a splash. Small. Close. Repeated. You lean over the side and see them. Fish. Dozens. Hundreds. All glowing faintly red. Not swimming, but hovering just beneath the surface, like they're watching. One breaches and lands without a ripple. The boy gasps. Dreamfish, he whispers. They swim the thread. According to an old pharaoh myth, dromlaks, dream salmon, swim between worlds. If you catch one, they say, it speaks your future in riddles, then forgets what it said. No one's caught one in years, mostly because they're not real, but also because anyone who tries forgets why they started. Your hand hovers over the railing. One fish glides closer. Its eye blinks sideways. Then it turns. Gone. You exhale and feel someone quietly tying another knot into your net. Here's a bizarre detail even some scholars don't believe. On at least 3 separate rune stones, found far apart in Norway and Iceland, there's a symbol resembling a horizontal red line crossed by a spiral. Interpretations vary. Boundaries, fire, transformation. But one interpretation links it to dreams that guide and lie at once. Sailors were warned. Do not follow the red without a circle in hand. Which might explain why every single net aboard now has a spiral charm added, even if crudely carved from driftwood or bone. You check yours. It's there now. You didn't put it there. The night drags on, endless. Sleep comes and goes in patches. You dream of walking a red thread stretched tight across the sea. It hums under your feet. Below, the water is full of mouths, not fish. They whisper in tones you almost understand. When you wake, your spiral charm is warm to the touch. The thread has vanished, but the sky is pink again. And somewhere deep in your mind, you hear a voice say, don't worry, you didn't follow it. Not fully. You exhale, and the wind returns. The sea is moving again. Not fast, not furious, but it has purpose now, like a beast stretching after a long nap. You feel it under your feet, a slight lean, a lazy push. The kind of current that doesn't ask your permission. It just goes, and you'd better go with it. The crew's mood has shifted too. They're not relieved, exactly, but they're awake, more alert. Ropes are checked twice. Nets adjusted. Even the helmsman tightens his cloak for the first time in days. Something's coming. You can feel it in your teeth. It's midday when you meet the carver. He boarded without warning, not from another ship, but from the sea itself. You blink twice before accepting the image. A narrow raft, woven from driftwood and seaweed, lashed together with bone hooks and rope. At its center, a small fire glows inside a shell of whale rib, somehow not extinguished by spray or logic. And there he is, old, barefoot, wrapped in seal leather and gull feathers, skin like wrinkled kelp, hands thick with callus. He has no oar. The sea seems to have delivered him like a message. He steps onto your ship as if it were expected. No one stops him. The helmsman nods. The carver's here. You, still trying to catch up, ask, what does he carve? The answer comes not from the helmsman, but from the boy with the feather in his hair. He carves sleep. It turns out that's not a metaphor. Well, okay, it is, but not in the poetic nonsense way. The carver is a dream crafter, a specialist. While everyone else makes nets to trap dreams, he carves runes into them to guide them or tame them, depending on the dream. He kneels on the deck, pulls a slab of driftwood from his satchel, and begins carving. No tools, just a small shard of obsidian, sharp as betrayal, wrapped in wax twine. His hands move fast, practiced. You watch the pattern emerge, a double spiral, flanked by 2 forked lines. What does it mean, you ask? He glances up, eyes pale as smoke. Means you're being watched. You stiffen. By who? He shrugs. You. But later, according to fragments from early Norse poems, mostly ignored because they read like nonsense-drunk texts, dream carvers were rare, but vital crew members. Not every ship had one. The good ones were passed between ships like living relics. They didn't speak much. They didn't fight, but they etched symbols into the nets, the oars, the masts, symbols said to anchor the soul during dangerous dreams. Some even carved tiny runes on the back of sailors' teeth, just in case the nightmares went that deep. You feel your molars unconsciously. Still smooth. For now, the carver pauses to inspect the dream nets hanging along the rigging. He touches one, frowns, and snaps a feather off with a practiced flick. This net is lying, he mutters. Another gets a nod of approval. Then he reaches yours. He squints, tilts his head, flicks the spiral charm once. It'll hold, he says, and moves on. You don't know whether to feel proud or worried. As the sun slips behind a veil of violet clouds, the carver lights a low fire in a shallow dish at the center of the deck. Around it, he arranges 5 small nets, each one different. One has shells. One has a single fish scale. Another has what looks like hair braided into the center. He begins to chant. Not loud, not melodic, just deliberate. The crew sits around, quiet, respectful. You watch the flames flicker. The nets sway. One begins to twist slightly, pulling inward like it's inhaling. Then you feel it, like a hand brushing the back of your neck. A presence. You glance around. Everyone is still. But the nets are moving in sync with each other, with the flame, with you. Here's a curious fact most people don't know. Archaeologists excavating old Norse settlements have found wooden discs etched with spirals and figures that don't match any known runes. They appear near hearths, under sleeping platforms, and sometimes beneath what look like child cradles. Some researchers dismiss them as game tokens. Others believe they were early dream tablets, precursors to symbolic maps used by navigators. And a few bold scholars argue they weren't maps of land or sea, but of sleep. The carver finishes the ritual. The flames go out on their own, no puff of smoke, just gone. He gathers the nets one by one and tucks them into a sealed bag of sealskin, knotted with red twine. You ask what he'll do with them. Throw them into the sea, he says. But why? They've done their work. He ties the bag closed and hands you a small token, a flat piece of antler, etched with the same double spiral you saw earlier. For your pillow, he says. That night you dream of nothing, and somehow it's the most restful sleep you've had in weeks. When morning comes, the carver is gone. No raft, no fire, just a damp patch on the deck, and one feather tied to the tiller. No one seems surprised. The helmsman only says, "He'll be where the wind needs a spine." Whatever that means. You tuck the antler charm into your belt, and as the ship creaks forward into a sky the color of forgotten ink, you feel something settle in your chest. A stillness. Not silence, but alignment. As if, for a moment, the sea and your thoughts agree on something. And somewhere behind your eyes, a knot tightens just enough to hold. The morning fog is gone, but in its place is a sky like iron, low and pressing. You could almost reach up and touch it, run your fingers across its cold, flat belly. The light is strange, flat, directionless. You squint and can't tell the sun is rising or falling. Even shadows are confused. The ship feels different too. Heavier, not in speed or weight, but in mood, like it's remembering something it would rather not. The helmsman doesn't speak. His hands grip the tiller like he's holding back a story. And then, ahead, someone spots it. A dark island, jagged and silent, rising from the sea like the back of some great creature that decided not to surface all the way. You change course. Because of course you do. As the ship pulls closer, the crew grows still, not scared, but alert. You hear a sailor murmur, "The place with the quiet stones." Another adds, "The ones that drink dreams." You ask what that means. No one answers, not with words. Anyway, they start tightening their nets, not dream nets this time, but real ones. Thicker, wait here, lined with beads of obsidian and scraps of animal hide. They don't look like tools. They look like barriers. The island has no beach, just cliffs that rise straight from the water, like they were sliced into shape by a vengeful god. But there's a gap, a low shelf of rock, just wide enough for a ship to nose up against. You dock. Ropes creak. The ship groans. No birds cry overhead. Just silence. Not the peaceful kind. The kind that makes your bones feel too loud. You step onto the rock and immediately feel the change. It's colder, not in temperature, but in presence, like the ground isn't glad you're here. The surface is dark granite, smoothed by centuries of wind and salt. And everywhere, scattered like bones, are stones. Not natural, carved. They're the size of pumpkins, each one slightly different, covered in spirals, rings, and strange indentations. No writing, no runes, just shapes. You bend down to touch one. The helmsman stops you. Careful, that one remembers sorrow. You freeze. Their memories? He nods. Dreams that couldn't leave. They anchor here. Wait for someone else to carry them. You stand back, very slowly. Few know this, but some Viking texts mention memory stones. Not in a poetic way. Literal objects, placed at sea sites where strange dreams were reported. Some claim they were anchors for dream currents, points in the sea where sleep and reality blurred. Modern archaeologists call these ideas folk nonsense, but the stones are real, found on remote islands in North Atlantic, always carved, always placed in clusters, never near settlements. Some believe they were markers. Others think they were graves, not for bodies, but for dreams too heavy to carry. You wander among them now, feeling watched, though nothing moves, except your thoughts, which begin to feel not entirely yours. The boy with the feather sits cross-legged near a particularly large stone. He hums, a low tune you don't recognize. "Why are you doing that?" you ask. "So the stone forgets me," he says, eyes still closed. "Oh, okay, cool." You start humming too. Can't hurt. In the center of the island is a flat basin, filled with dark water, perfectly still, reflecting nothing. The carver, yes, somehow he's here again. Don't ask. Stands at its edge. He tosses a net into the water. It doesn't sink. It floats, and slowly it begins to glow. Faint lines of blue, like veins of lightning, trace across it. You watch, mesmerized. Then you hear a voice, not out loud, inside. It says, "This is the shape of forgetting." You step back, startled. The others don't react. Just you. You look down. Your dream net, the one tied to your side, has begun to tighten. On its own, you feel your heart skip. Later, back on the ship, the helmsman hands you something. A small stone, smooth, carved with a spiral. "Keep it under your tongue tonight," he says. "Why?" "In case the island follows." You stare at the stone. It's cold, heavier than it should be. You don't ask more questions. Not this time. Historians still debate the purpose of stone anchorings in Norse culture. Were they shrines, navigation points, ritual markers? Some suggest they were placed at locations where sailors experienced shared dreams, a phenomenon still unexplainable. Others say they were just ballast stones, shaped for grip, but none can explain the consistent carvings, or why some stones, buried for centuries, still leave indentations on surrounding soil, as if they pulse, breathe, or whisper. That night, the sea is quiet, but your thoughts are not. You lie still, the stone under your tongue. It tastes of salt and something bitter, like burnt herbs and old metal. Your dream begins slowly. You walk through a hall of stone, each wall covered in carvings. The air is thick. You feel watched. You reach out and touch a spiral, and suddenly you remember something, but it's not your memory. It's cold, wet, a woman's voice calling out in Old Norse. Then nothing. You wake with a gasp. Your stone is warm, and your net has a new loop. It wasn't there before. You decide not to ask what it means. You already know. The wind today is different. You notice at the moment you stand up. It doesn't whistle or howl or even hum. It just presses. A slow, deliberate push, like the air itself is trying to move you 1 inch to the left. Not with urgency, but with quiet insistence. The kind of wind that makes flags hang wrong and loose sails twist inward. The helmsman calls it a folded wind. You ask what that means. He shrugs. Means it's come through too many dreams to be straight anymore. You stare at him. He doesn't blink. The crew's moving slower today. Not lazy. Not tired. Just cautious. They speak in whispers. They tread lightly. Even a boy with a feather has braided his net tighter, adding 2 new bones and what looks suspiciously like the claw of a seabird. No one asks. He doesn't explain. A girl ties a thin leather pouch to the prow, not for offerings, but for embers. You think you misheard. Then you see it. A small fire burning quietly in a clay bowl, covered with fine mesh. It glows dull red, like a coal bed after midnight. You ask her what it's for. To burn dreams before they wake, she says. Right, obviously. Turns out, the Vikings had a practice known only in a few oral accounts and rare poetic fragments, Eldraim or fire sleep. The belief? That certain dreams were flammable, volatile thoughts that, if carried too long, would ignite at sea. Not physically, though in at least one saga, a dream supposedly set a man's beard on fire, but spiritually. Burning the dream symbol, usually a token, a feather, a tuft of hair, was said to quiet its power. And sometimes they burned them before the dream came. just in case. Preventative exorcism, Viking style. That night, you're handed a pouch of ash. Sleep with it, the helmsman says. Or near it. Or just don't sleep at all. You glance at your net. It's been hardened somehow, dipped in resin or bloodroot. It crackles when you touch it. One loop is wrapped entirely in burnt wool. Apparently, someone else dreamed for you last night. That's kind of sweet. Sometime near midnight, the ship begins to tilt. Not from waves. The sea is flat, but from a slow, creeping pull, as if the water beneath you just remembered it has somewhere to be. You peer over the side. The water is glowing. Not bioluminescence. Not plankton. Something deeper. A soft orange light, like coals beneath glass, flickers from far below. You squint. Shapes move within it. Not fish. Not people. Just shadows. Curling. Stretching. Reaching. The helmsman doesn't look. He just says, "Don't touch the glow." You nod. Fast. Little known detail. Some Viking accounts speak of sea fire beneath. A light that appears only after long dreams, especially when the crew shares the same symbols. Some describe it as the dreams burning off, purging themselves from below, safe and distant. Others claimed it was the dreams trying to return. One tale tells of a man who dipped his hand into that glow. His net knotted itself completely. He didn't wake again. As the night deepens, the girl with the ember bowl begins to hum. Not a lullaby, not a chant. Just a slow drone, rising and falling like the ship's breath. The boy joins in. Then another. Soon the deck is filled with low, wordless sound, a kind of sonic firewall, if such a thing could exist. You join in too. You don't know why, but it feels right. The glow below dims. One by one, nets stop twitching. Even your own, that coiled mess of bone, string, and half-believed logic, relaxes. Just slightly. One knot untangles. Just one. But enough. You dream of heat. Not fire. Not sun. Just warmth, wrapping your body from the inside out. You float through a world of glowing ash and flickering memory. Hands reach for you, but not to harm, to pass something on. A name, a shape, a soft word in a language you almost recognize. You wake with dry lips, and find that someone, maybe you, place a charcoal mark across your forehead. The helmsman nods when he sees it. "Dream spent," he says. "That one won't come again." You feel strangely relieved, and you finally understand some dreams aren't meant to be solved, just survived. You wake to the sound of footsteps, not running, not rushing, just walking, which wouldn't be strange, except for two things. One, they're coming from everywhere. Two, it's midday and no one's on deck. You rise. Slowly. The wind is soft. The sky is pale and blank, like the inside of a shell. And the footsteps? Still going. Rhythmic. Measured. Like a watch rotation. Like a patrol. You glance around the deck. Empty. Even the helmsman is gone. But the footsteps continue. You check below deck. Still no one. Then you notice the dream nets. They're moving. Not twitching, walking. A net, one of the large ones, woven with rope and bone charms, has fallen from its hook and now drags itself across the floor, slow and silent, as if pulled by a wind only can feel. Another sways in place like a pendulum. A third has twisted itself into a perfect circle, again not flapping, not fluttering, just turning. And then a voice behind you, they're training. You spin. It's the helmsman. Of course. He looks rested, Alert! They do this before the white, he says. You stare at him. Before the what? He looks out over the sea. The night of walking minds. Oh, of course. Why not? Here's a piece of Viking lore almost no one talks about. A phenomenon called Viking, or white walking. It was said that on certain nights, especially near the solstice, the minds of the crew would not rest in their heads, but walk together silently across the ship, like shared sleepwalking. No words, no dreams, just presence. And when they woke, the ship would be farther than it should be, not in miles, but in time. Some said a whole night would pass in an hour. Others, that they'd lost a year. You look down at the net again. It stopped moving, but it still feels awake. That evening, you're given a task. Join the watch, not to guard the ship, to guard the sleep. Each sailor pairs off. One sleeps, one stays awake beside them, humming quietly, keeping the rhythms intact. You're paired with the boy. He's nervous. You ask if he's ever done this before. He shakes his head. Not all the way. Just once. I forgot my name for a morning. Oh, great. He shrugs. It came back. Mostly. As the sun dips into a blue-gray horizon, the ritual begins. Dream nets are lowered from the mast. Bones are tapped 3 times each. The fire bowl is lit, not bright, just a coal red. You sit beside the boy, who curls into his cloak, clutching his net like a pillow. You hum. Soft, steady, no words. It feels ridiculous. Until you realize every voice on deck is doing the same thing. 50 low hums. One ship. No motion. Just breath. You look out to sea, and then you see them. Figures. Walking along the water. No ships. No sails. Just outlines, pale and slow, moving just above the waves. One by one, in rows. Like a night watch made of ghosts. Your hum catches in your throat. The helmsman appears beside you. Don't break the sound, he says. Who are they? He tilts his head. Sometimes, us. You want to ask more, but you can't. You hum again, because you're suddenly not sure if they'll keep walking if you stop. Little known truth. Some Viking crews trained to walk together in sleep. A practice some scholars now think was a mental survival tactic during long winter voyages. They'd synchronize patterns of rest, breathing, even dreams. Whole ships would drift in coordinated half-sleep, guided by 1 or 2 fully awake. Most dismissed it as ritual or myth. But modern researchers studying sensory deprivation confirm something strange. When groups fall asleep near each other in total silence, their brain waves can sync. Is it science, spirituality, or just loneliness turned into tradition? You don't know, but you hum louder now, just in case. Midway through the night, the boy starts mumbling. You lean closer. He's speaking in Old Norse, words you recognize but don't understand. His fingers trace loops in the air, copying the patterns of his dream net. Then he gasps and says a name. Not his, not yours, just the name. It hangs in the air like frost. You hum louder. He settles again. But now his net is glowing. Faint, pale white, not warm. Cold light, like the sky before snow. Dawn. Everyone wakes slowly. Cautiously. No one speaks. The nets hang limp. The fire is out. And the ship? You check the stars. You ask the helmsman. He confirms what you already feel. You've moved farther than you should have. By how much? No one knows. Or, more likely, no one wants to say. You look at the boy. Do you remember? He nods, then shakes his head, then smiles, and ties a new knot. I don't know what it means, he says, but I think it's mine. You smile too, and for once you don't ask for answers. You just tie your own knot, small, quiet, to mark the night your mind learned to walk. By now, you've stopped expecting normal days. That's probably healthy, because today, the first thing you see is a bird, perched calmly on the mast. That has no business being here. It's large, plump, wings too short, waddling rather than flapping. Its feathers are dark but speckled, and its eyes are bright with the kind of intelligence that says, "Yes, I know you're staring." It stares back, then it squawks, loud, abrupt, disrespectful. You freeze. The helmsman emerges from behind a rope bundle, shielding his eyes. "Oh no," he says. The bird squawks again, twice this time, then hops a full circle. And now everyone on deck is officially concerned. The boy whispers, "It's a dream fowl." You raise an eyebrow. "It's a chicken?" "No," he says solemnly. "It's not supposed to exist." "Right? Of course not. Let's talk about Viking ornithopmancy. Yes, that's a real word. The Vikings, like many ancient seafarers, believed birds were messengers. Obvious ones like gulls and ravens had clear symbolism. But there are scattered mentions in Icelandic sagas and oral traditions of feathered visitors that appeared only in dreams or during times of intense navigation difficulty. These weren't normal birds. They didn't fly in from land. They arrived on ships, and always at the wrong time. The creature on your mast now, short-beaked, bow-legged, looking like a penguin that got lost, definitely fits that bill. No one touches it. No one speaks to it. The helmsman retrieves a leather pouch, pulls out a small mirror, and shows it to the bird. It squawks, then pecks the reflection once. The crew exhales. "That's good. Means it's dreaming," someone says. "Oh, good? Maybe." The bird hops down the mast like it owns the place, waddles across the deck, and perches next to the fire bowl. It begins pecking at the ash. The boy leans in. "They say it carries parts of other people's dreams," he whispers. "Like stolen dreams?" "Not stolen. Borrowed. Just never returned." Here's a strange truth. There are documented accounts, mostly dismissed, of sailors describing dreams of birds that knew their names, brought back items they'd lost at sea, or whispered riddles no one else understood. One 11th century journal described a bird that recited an entire funeral poem before vanishing into fog. Some believe these were hallucinations. Others suggest mass dream events, shared subconscious experiences common among tightly bonded crews. And a few believe the birds were real, but only briefly, and never twice. The dream fowl, as it's now being called, waddles up to your dream net and begins pecking gently at a knot, not violently, delicately, like it's trying to undo something. You reach out. The helmsman stops you. If it unknots you, he says, you'll forget something important. You look at the knot. You don't remember tying it, but somehow you know what it holds. You pull your hand back. The bird nods, if birds had gnawed, and moves on. At sunset, the bird walks calmly to the ship's edge, flutters its stubby wings, and jumps. No splash, just gone, like it was never there. The crew seems different now, not shaken, not scared, just quieter, more aware of their nets. One sailor reties hers completely. Another adds a strip of copper wire. You examine yours. Nothing's changed, or maybe something has. and you just can't remember. Either way, you tie a second loop just to be sure, and whisper into it, "Not this one. Please." That night, your dream is strange. You're walking through a snowfield. Ahead of you, dozens of penguin-like birds waddle in perfect silence. You try to call out, but your mouth doesn't open. One bird turns, looks you in the eye, and blinks. It carries a net in its beak, your net. It drops it at your feet and speaks one word. "Remember." You wake with a gasp. Your net is unchanged, but there's a feather tucked into the spiral. Dark, speckled, definitely not yours. Historians still debate whether Viking references to dreamfowl are literal or metaphorical. Are they symbolic devices, hallucinations from sleep deprivation, or something else, strange, rare, and half remembered by the sea itself? No consensus exists. But many sagas agree on one thing. When the bird arrives, do not follow it. Do not speak its name. And if it leaves you something, keep it close, but never tie it too tight. The next morning you feel lighter, not happy, not clear, but like something has moved inside your memory, like a piece has been taken away and another left in its place. The feather flutters slightly in the wind. You leave it there, tied, for now. The day begins with scissors, or rather, a knife sharpened too many times, glinting in the morning haze. It rests on a flat stone beside a wooden stool. You blink once, and the helmsman is seated there, pulling a strand of hair taut between his fingers. He doesn't say a word, just lifts the blade, slices the strand, and lets it fall. It drifts, slow and deliberate, into a small bowl below. Snip, another, and another. It's not just him. The crew is cutting their hair. The boy sits cross-legged on the deck, curls bunched in his hand. He stares at them like they're about to tell him a secret. You approach slowly. What's happening? He doesn't look up. It's the measuring. The what? He gestures toward the fallen strands. We're measuring how far we've gone. You blink. With hair? He nods, very serious. Dreams grow in the ends. If they start splitting, it means the sea's too full. You think that can't possibly make sense. And then you remember everything else that's happened. So, yeah, that tracks. Here's a Viking practice you probably never learned about in school. In some coastal Norse villages, sailors returning from long voyages would offer their hair as proof of travel, not in lengths, in condition. The belief was that dreams lodge in hair during sleep, especially at sea. The longer the voyage, the more tangled, brittle, or possessed the strands. Some captains even required ritual haircuts before landfall, not out of hygiene, but to shed the weight of the voyage. A few even kept locks of hair sealed in wax or fish oil as dream maps, supposedly readable by skilled women called tifro or twisters. You wonder what your hair would say. You suddenly feel very heavy. Later that morning, the girl with the fire bowl brings you a mirror. A shard, really, bronze-backed, fog at the edges. She holds it up. You see yourself. You see the sea behind you, and you see your hair, knotted, split, unruly. At the ends, little twists, almost like tiny spirals. You don't remember tying them. You ask, "Did someone braid this?" She shakes her head. "They did that while you slept." "They?" She smiles. You. The helmsman approaches, holding his own cut strands in a linen wrap. He places them into a small pouch, ties it shut, and drops it overboard. It floats for a moment, then sinks. "Sending it back," he says. "To who?" to wherever we picked it up. You stand there, fingers in your hair, suddenly unsure whether to keep it or cut it. He shrugs. Only cut if you want to forget. You pause, then snip one piece. Just one. You tie it to your net, not to lose, but to hold still. Some old Norse myths say that hair contains lengthened thought, that the mind continues out through the body, and the ends of your hair catch things your eyes don't see. Wind, direction, messages. That's why so many Viking women and warriors wore their hair long, not for beauty, but intuition. And why? When grief came, it was always the first thing to go, not out of mourning, out of protection. Grief is contagious, they believed. It clings to the strands and spreads. By nightfall, the ship smells faintly of oil and ash. A dozen strands have been burned at the prow, each tied with charm, each named aloud by the person who cut it. You hear names you don't recognize. A brother, a ship, a storm, a dream. The boy stands beside you, feathers swaying in his hair. He looks older today, not by years, by memory. He holds up a bit of your hair, one of the fallen pieces. Want me to braid this? You nod. He ties it into his net. It'll remember for both of us, he says. That night, your dream is full of wind, not noise, just movement. You're standing in a field of hair, long, black strands swaying like grass, stretching in every direction. You walk. The wind picks up. The strands begin to tangle around your feet. You try to run, but then you realize the knots aren't holding you. They're showing you the way. You follow them, and in the distance you see the sea, but not your sea, a different one made of thought. You wake up sweating. Your hair is tangled, and tied into it, gently, perfectly, is a single silver thread. You didn't put it there, but you don't untie it. Not yet. Historians still argue over the symbolic role of hair in Norse ritual. Was it purely aesthetic? A mark of class? A functional tool against lice? But those who study the intersection of folklore and maritime life find more compelling ideas. Hair as memory anchor. Hair as spiritual map. Hair as the final trace of a dream before it slips away. You run your fingers through yours now. Slowly. It feels heavier. Not bad. Just full. And tonight, you won't cut again. Because now, you're beginning to understand. The sea doesn't just move your ship. It changes your shadow. And sometimes, it grows your dreams for you, one strand at a time. You wake before the others. Not because of the sound, but the absence of it. The waves are gone. Not flat, not still, just missing. The sea beneath the ship doesn't move. The hull doesn't groan. The sails don't flap. The air is thick and expecting. It feels like standing in a theater before the curtain rises. A hush, not a peace, but of something holding its breath. Then the sky opens. No light, no storm, no clouds. Just a pale sheet of colorless sky, like the inside of a pearl, wide, endless, and wrong. You step to the edge of the deck and look out. No horizon, no line between sea and air. Just gray bleeding into gray, like the ship is floating in the scene between two unfinished thoughts. The helmsman appears beside you, as if summoned by stillness. It's time, he says. You swallow. Time for what? He looks up, blinking slowly. The dream without a shape. Of course. Why not? Here's something few people know. Among the most mysterious Viking navigational beliefs was the concept of the unformed dream drawn from Laust. It was a state, not a place, A moment in travel when all symbols became soft, all patterns turned inside out. The maps wouldn't help. The nets wouldn't twitch. Even the stars might refuse to shine. Most sailors denied it. Others claimed every ship passed through it once. And if you were quiet enough and still enough, it would let you through. But only if you didn't try to understand it. You look around now. The nets have gone slack. The fire bowl has gone out, not in smoke, just quietly extinguished, like someone erases flame from memory. Even the boy is silent, seated cross-legged, eyes open, but not seeing. A feather lies beside him, unmoving. The helmsman walks the deck and begins to remove the symbols. He unties charms from the rigging, loosens bone spirals from the tiller, even peels the painted spiral from the mast. Each piece is dropped gently into the sea. They do not float. They dissolve. You whisper, "What are you doing?" He replies softly, "You don't carry shape into shapelessness. It confuses a path." You nod, pretend to understand. You're handed your net. It's cold, not physically, but absent, like it no longer remembers being itself. The loops are loose. The feathers lie flat. You hold it up to the light. If light is what you call this pale hum, and the net casts no shadow, you blink. The helmsman sees your face. He nods. It's working. For the next hour, maybe more, maybe less, no clocks in this kind of nowhere, the ship floats through silence. No talking, no movement, no humming, no thinking too hard. The dream, they say, must pass through you, not the other way around. You close your eyes. You see nothing. Then you see everything. A swirl of faces you've never met. Ships you've never sailed. Nets made of water. Stars shaped like birds. A shoreline where people sleep, standing up. You're not dreaming, but you're not you either. You are watching something else remember itself. And somehow it feels familiar. You open your eyes and find the ship is moving again. Waves lap gently against the hull. The feather has lifted slightly in the boy's hair. The fire bowl glows again, just faintly. The nets have regained their shape, but some knots are gone. Some loops are new. You check yours. One feather missing. One spiral turned inward. One thread tied in a language you don't read. The helmsman returns the charm to the tiller. He doesn't speak, but his shoulders relax. The sky is darker now, real dark, with edges and clouds and meaning and stars, finally. Stars like you remember. Stars you can name. Some historians claim drawn from Laos is just poetic metaphor, a Viking way of describing spiritual disorientation or sleep paralysis or even fog. Others suggest it was a deliberate mental technique, a ritualized state where the crew erased belief, then let it rebuild. But every source, every line, every whisper agrees on one thing. You leave something behind in the unformed dream, and you get something back, but it's never the same shape. You lie down that night with strange comfort in your chest. The sea feels real again. So, dear thoughts, but something's different, just slightly, like a door's been added to a room you never noticed. You don't know where it leads, but you're not afraid of it. Your net, loose in your hand, flutters once, and then stills. The last morning arrives like it's been waiting all along. You don't wake up, not really. You just surface, slowly, from sleep that was more like soaking in silence. The kind of rest that makes your muscles feel hollow, your thoughts uncreased. You blink into the gray-blue light and realize the ship is already in motion, but different. It feels familiar, like it's not just heading somewhere, it's returning. The helmsman stands at the prow, not steering, just watching. His dream net hangs limp at his side, every knot carefully opened, not untied. Opened, like someone unfolded a letter they've been afraid to read. You ask, where are we? He nods forward, and there, through the thinning mist, you see it. Land, but not a dramatic coastline, not cliffs or spires or thunderheads. Just a soft, low shoreline, green, quiet, edged with black sand and dotted with seabirds. And above it, a single cloud shaped like a spiral. Of course, as the ship approaches, the crew stirs, not with excitement, but with a gentle kind of awe. No one speaks. They move like people arriving home, not discovering anything new. The boy with the feather looks up and smiles. I remember this place, he says. You glance over. Have you been here? He shrugs. Not yet, but I remember it. According to one of the oldest and least cited Norse sailor texts, every crew that travels long enough will eventually reach what's called Dromheim. It means a home of dreams. But not heaven, not death, just a shore where dreams return to sleep, a place not always on maps. Sometimes it appears in the east, sometimes in the north, sometimes in the middle of the sea, and always after the last knot is tied, or untied. The ship glides into shallow water. No anchor is dropped. It just stops, and suddenly you feel something in your chest go still. Not empty, just complete. Like whatever was moving in there, fear, questions, that tiny storm you carry with you, has sat down for the first time in weeks. You step off the ship onto the soft black sand. It's warm, warmer than it should be, and the air smells like moss and salt and something else, something you smelled only in dreams. The crew fans out without instructions. Some kneel and press their palms into the earth. Some unroll their dream nets and bury them, gently, knot by knot. The helmsman sits cross-legged near the water's edge. He closes his eyes. You walk inland, just a few steps, and there it is, a tree, lone, bent, wind-warped, but still standing, and hanging from its branches, dream nets, hundreds, some old and frayed, some gleaming with new string, some with feathers still fluttering, some with center spirals that turn ever so slightly in the wind. You recognize none of them, but they all feel like yours. You choose a branch. You hang your net. It sways once, then stills. You step back. You don't expect anything, but you feel something. A whisper, not in your ears, in your bones. Thank you. That night, back on the ship, no one ties knots. The nets remain folded. The fire bowl is cold. And yet no one dreams, because nothing needs to be caught anymore. In the margins of a 9th century logbook, one sailor scribbled the following line: "When a net is empty and still I sleep well, that is how I know the sea has taught me." No one ever found the sailor's name, but they found the page, rolled inside a bone tube, tied with a blue thread, and next to it, a tiny carved spiral. The ship turns gently in the current. The stars above you are sharp and kind. The boy sleeps beside you, the feather still tucked behind his ear. You close your eyes, and your final thought is not a story, not a question, just a shape, looping, widening, soft. You drift, not away, but deeper in, and the sea, for once, does not call for you. It cradles you and hums,